The desert wind howled through the canyons of Egypt's eastern desert, carrying whispers of a secret buried for millennia. Dr. Lila Marlowe wiped sweat from her brow, her flashlight beam cutting through the dust-choked air of the newly uncovered tunnel. The walls were etched with symbols that made her pulse quicken, serpents coiled around inverted crosses, stars bleeding into spirals. Gnostic sigils. Forbidden ones. "Over here," she called to her team, her voice bouncing off the narrow stone passage. Her gloved fingers brushed sand from a cracked clay jar half embedded in the wall. Inside lay a codex, its pages brittle but intact. The leather binding disintegrated at her touch, revealing Aramaic script stained rust red, as though written in blood. "The waters rose not to cleanse but to bind," she read aloud, squinting at the jagged letters. "The demiurge's wrath drowned the flesh, yet the sparks endure. I, Noah, confess, the ark was no salvation. It was a cage." Her graduate student, Amir, leaned in, his flashlight trembling. "Sparks? Like souls." Before Lila could answer, the ground shuddered. A low rumble echoed through the tunnel. Not an earthquake, but engines. Heavy boots crunched gravel outside. Shouts in Italian. Vatican Latin. "They found us," Amir whispered. Lila's mind raced. The Vatican's Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith had shadowed her digs for years, ever since she'd published theories linking Noah's flood to Gnostic texts. But this? A first-hand account from Noah himself, painting the ark as a prison? This was beyond heresy. This unraveled everything. She tore the crucial page free as the first gunshot rang out. 24 hours earlier. Lila stood in Cairo's dimly lit archives, tracing a finger over a 15th century map of the eastern desert. A monk's marginal note caught her eye. "Here lies the Book of Noah, wherein the keeper of the ark mourns his betrayal." The Vatican had redacted the coordinates, but not well enough. Her mentor, Dr. Elias Carter, had warned her. "They'll burn your career to ash if you keep digging," he'd said, his voice crackling over the phone. "The Ark story is the church's cornerstone. You're saying Noah wasn't a hero but a collaborator." Lila hadn't answered. Let him think it was academic pride. He didn't know about the dreams, visions of a second ark, invisible, humming with a frequency that vibrated her bones. Or the whispers that woke her nightly, the flood never ended. Present day, the tunnel. Lila sprinted through the desert night, Amir's body left behind in the tunnel, a dark stain spreading across his I Red Heart Archaeology t-shirt. The surviving page burned against her chest. "The Nephilim sleep in the marrow of bones," it read. "Their sparks yearn for the pleroma, but Yaldabaoth's chains hold fast." She stumbled into a Bedouin camp at dawn, where an elder examined the page. His wrinkled face paled. "This speaks of Alanson Al-Camel, the perfect human. Before the flood, souls moved freely between worlds. The ark, it was a filter. Trapped them in flesh." "Why?" Lila asked. The old man's eyes gleamed. "To make us forget we're divine." Flashback, Mount Hermon, 3400 BCE. Noah knelt in the mud, rain lashing his face. The Watchers, tall, luminous beings with too many joints in their fingers, swarmed the half-built ark. "You doom them," hissed the Watcher Shemhazai, his voice like wind through dead leaves. "The demiurge fears what we gave them, the spark to see beyond his illusion." Noah gripped his hammer tighter. "The Creator demands obedience." "Creator." Shemhazai laughed, a sound like breaking ice. "Yaldabaoth is a blind infant, molding clay in the dark. We tried to wake your kind. Now he'll drown even the memory of freedom." As the first raindrops hit the ark's deck, Noah glimpsed the families huddled inside, their eyes vacant, mouths slack. Souls already cut from the source. Present day, Cairo. Lila stared at the DNA report on her laptop. The geneticist's words chilled her. There's a repeating junk sequence in human chromosome 2, inactive, unless exposed to specific sound frequencies. Like resonance patterns from a giant wooden vessel. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text, Gobekli Tepe. Pillar 43. The second ark awakens. Attached was a photo of a 12,000-year-old carving. An ark, yes, but shaped like a double helix, its keel a spiral of human figures reaching upward. The same spiral from her codex. The Vatican's agents would be closing in. But as Lila booked a flight to Turkey, she smiled for the first time in weeks. Noah's confession ended with a plea. Tell them the flood was not the end. The key is in the blood. She intended to. The ancient stones of Göbekli Tepe loomed before Lila, their weathered surfaces etched with secrets older than civilization itself. Pillar 43 stood at the center, its carvings more intricate than any textbook had prepared her for. The spiral of human figures reached upward, not toward heaven, but toward a shimmering veil that seemed to ripple in the pre-dawn light. "It's not just a carving," whispered Dr. Emre Yilmaz, the Turkish archaeologist who had agreed to meet her in secret. "Watch." As the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, they struck the pillar at a precise angle. For a breathtaking moment, the spiral seemed to move, the figures climbing higher, reaching for something just beyond their grasp. "The Watchers called it the Pleroma," Emre explained, his voice hushed with awe. "The fullness of divine reality. They believe humans could access it before the flood." Lila's mind raced back to the fragment she'd salvaged from the Egyptian tunnel. "The Nephilim sleep in the marrow of bones," she recited. "Their sparks yearn for the Pleroma, but Yaldabaoth's chains hold fast." Emre nodded grimly. The Watchers were not the monstrous giants of Sunday school stories. They were teachers, trying to awaken humanity to its true potential. And for that, they were punished. A cold wind whipped through the ancient site, carrying whispers of a past long buried. Lila closed her eyes, and suddenly she was there, witnessing a moment lost to time. Mount Hermon, 3500 BCE. The Watcher Azazel stood atop the mountain, his form shimmering with otherworldly light. Before him knelt a group of humans, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. "We offer you knowledge," Azazel intoned, his voice resonating like distant thunder. "The secrets of the cosmos, the power to shape matter, the ability to see beyond the veil of illusion." A woman stepped forward, her dark eyes blazing with curiosity. "And what do you ask in return?" Azazel's expression softened. "Only that you remember your true nature. You are not mere clay, shaped by a jealous God. You are sparks of the divine, capable of transcending this material prison." As he spoke, he drew a symbol in the air, a double helix intertwined with a spiraling staircase. "This is the key," he said, "hidden in your very essence. Yaldabaoth thinks he created you, but he merely trapped what already existed." The humans gathered closer, drinking in every word. But high above, beyond the clouds, a great eye opened. The demiurge had noticed, and he was not pleased. Lila gasped as the vision faded, finding herself back at Göbekli Tepe. Emre steadied her, concern etched on his face. "You saw something, didn't you?" he asked. She nodded, still shaken. "The Watchers, they weren't trying to corrupt humanity. They were trying to free us." Emre's expression darkened, and the flood was Yaldabaoth's response. Not a cleansing, but a reset, drowning the awakened and starting over with a more compliant model. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the ancient stones, Lila felt the weight of millennia pressing down on her. The story she'd been chasing was far bigger than she'd imagined. Noah's Ark wasn't just a boat, it was a prison ship designed to trap souls in a cycle of reincarnation, cut off from their divine source. "There's more," Emre said, leading her to a small tent set up near the excavation site. Inside, laid out on a folding table, was a collection of clay tablets covered in cuneiform script. "These were found nearby, buried in a sealed chamber," he explained. "They are troubling. It seems Noah wasn't just a passive participant in the flood. He made a bargain." Lila's heart raced as she scanned the ancient text. The story unfolded before her eyes. Noah, torn between loyalty to the demiurge and the pleading of the Watchers, struck a deal. He would build the ark, trapping humanity's divine spark in flesh and bone. But he would also create a second ark, a hidden key that could one day unlock the prison. "The second ark sails in the blood of the awakened," Lila read aloud, the words sending a chill down her spine. "But where is it? How do we find it?" Emre's eyes gleamed with a mixture of excitement and fear. "That's the thing, Dr. Marlowe. I don't think it's a physical object. I think it's us. Our DNA. The very thing that binds us might also be the key to our liberation." As if on cue, Lila's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The Vatican knows. "Run. The frequency is 528 hertz. Find the resonance." Lila looked up at Emre, her mind reeling. "We need to go. Now. But where?" The Turkish archaeologist smiled grimly. "I have a friend at CERN. If anyone can help us unlock the secrets hidden in our genes, it's her." As they hurried from the ancient site, Lila cast one last glance at Pillar 43. For a moment, she could have sworn she saw the carved figures move again, reaching, straining, yearning to break free from their stone prison. The race to awaken the second ark had begun, and with it, the chance to finally end the flood that had drowned humanity's true potential for millennia. The sterile corridors of CERN's underground facility hummed with an energy that made Lila's skin prickle. Dr. Sophia Russo, a quantum physicist with wild curls and eyes that sparkled with barely contained excitement, led them through a maze of high-tech equipment. "When Emre told me about your discovery," Sophia said, her French accent lilting, "I couldn't believe it. But then, I started looking at our data from a new perspective." She stopped before a massive screen displaying a dizzying array of genetic sequences. "Tell me, Dr. Marlowe, what do you know about junk DNA?" Lila frowned. "Non-coding sequences, right? Most of the human genome, with no known function." Sophia's grin widened. "That's what we thought. But look at this." She tapped a few keys, and the sequences rearranged themselves. Suddenly, a pattern emerged, a double helix intertwined with a spiraling staircase, just like the vision Lila had experienced at Göbekli Tepe. "Impossible," Emre whispered. "Not impossible," Sophia countered. "Just hidden. This pattern repeats throughout what we thought was junk DNA. But here's the kicker. It only becomes visible when exposed to a very specific frequency." Lila's heart raced. 528 hertz. Sophia's eyebrows shot up. "How did you know?" Before Lila could answer, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and security shutters began to descend. "They're here," Lila said, her voice tight. "The Vatican's agents." Sophia paled but quickly regained her composure. "This way," she said, leading them to a small, unmarked door. "There's something you need to see before we go." They hurried down a narrow staircase, descending deeper beneath the Earth's surface than Lila thought possible. The air grew thick and charged with an energy she couldn't explain. "Welcome," Sophia said as they entered a vast, dimly lit chamber, to humanity's best-kept secret. Before them stood a towering structure of interlocking golden rings, pulsing with an otherworldly light. At its center, suspended in midair, was a shimmering, DNA-like strand that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "The second ark," Emre breathed. Sophia nodded. "We call it the resonance engine. It's been here for thousands of years, maintained in secret by those who remembered the truth about the flood." Lila approached the structure, drawn by an inexplicable pull. As she neared, images flashed through her mind, countless lives, countless incarnations, all trapped in the cycle of reincarnation imposed by the flood. "How does it work?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It amplifies the 528 hertz frequency," Sophia explained. "In theory, if activated, it could resonate with the hidden sequences in every human's DNA, awakening the dormant potential the Watchers tried to nurture." A deep boom echoed through the chamber. The Vatican's forces had breached the upper levels. "We're out of time," Emre said urgently. "We need to activate it now." Sophia hesitated. "You don't understand. Activating the engine doesn't just awaken humanity's potential. It shatters the very reality the Demiurge created. Everything we know, history, science, religion, it all comes into question." Lila stood before the resonance engine, her hand hovering near its surface. She could feel the weight of countless souls pressing against the veil of illusion, yearning to remember their true nature. "Maybe it's time for a new flood," she said softly. "Not of water, but of awakening." As shouts and gunfire echoed from above, Lila made her choice. She pressed her palm against the engine's golden surface. The world exploded into light. Lila found herself floating in an ocean of consciousness, surrounded by billions of sparks, each a human soul. She saw the truth of the flood, the Demiurge's desperate attempt to maintain control over a creation that was outgrowing him. She witnessed Noah's anguish as he sealed the ark, trapping humanity's divine potential in flesh and bone. But she also saw hope. The second ark, hidden in plain sight within every human cell, waiting for the right moment to set them free. As the 528 hertz frequency resonated through time and space, Lila felt the chains of forgetfulness begin to crumble. Across the globe, humans gasp awake, remembering lives long past and truths long buried. The flood was ending, but the real journey was just beginning. When Lila opened her eyes, she found herself back in the chamber beneath CERN. Sophia and Emre stared at her in awe, their eyes shimmering with newfound awareness. "What have we done?" Emre whispered. Lila smiled, feeling the weight of ages lift from her shoulders. We've given humanity a choice. To remember who we really are. As they ascended to a world forever changed, Lila knew that the story of Noah's Ark, of divine sparks trapped in human form, was far from over. The waters were receding, and the true nature of reality was finally emerging from the depths. The question now was, what would humanity build on this new, uncovered shore? The world outside CERN was in chaos. As Lila, Emre, and Sophia emerged from the facility, they were met with a scene of both wonder and terror. People stumbled through the streets, their eyes wide with shock as long-buried memories flooded their consciousness. Some wept with joy, others screamed in anguish as they recalled past lives and the truth of their divine nature. News feeds on nearby screens showed similar scenes unfolding across the globe. In New York, traffic had ground to a halt as drivers experienced visions of ancient Atlantis. In Beijing, thousands gathered in Tiananmen Square, drawn by a shared memory of celestial realms. And in Jerusalem, members of all faiths converged on the Temple Mount, united by the sudden understanding that their divisions were part of the Demiurge's grand illusion. "It's beautiful," Sophia whispered, her eyes glistening with tears. But Emre's expression was grim. "And dangerous. Look." He pointed to a group of black-clad figures moving purposefully through the chaos. The Vatican's agents, their faces now masks of determination tinged with fear. "They're not just after us anymore," Lila realized. "They're trying to contain the awakening." As if to confirm her words, a booming voice echoed across the landscape, emanating from emergency broadcast systems and cell phones alike. "This is an urgent message from the United Nations Security Council. A global state of emergency has been declared. Citizens are advised to remain in their homes. Do not trust your memories. Repeat, do not trust your memories." Lila felt a chill run down her spine. The Demiurge's earthly forces were mobilizing, desperate to maintain control in the face of humanity's spiritual rebellion. "We need to move," she said urgently. "There's more to uncover." As they made their way through the streets, dodging both awakening citizens and authority figures, Lila's phone buzzed with a message from the same unknown number. The Vatican Archive. Sealed scroll. Testament of Shem. The final key. Emre peered at the message. Shem? Noah's son. Lila nodded, her mind racing. The missing piece. Noah built the ark, but Shem. Shem might have left instructions on how to fully unlock it. Their path to Rome was fraught with danger. The world's governments, reeling from the sudden awakening of their populations, had implemented draconian measures to maintain order. Borders were closed, flights grounded. But with Sophia's CERN credentials and Emre's archaeological contacts, they managed to secure passage on a private research vessel crossing the Mediterranean. As they sailed through waters that had once drowned the world, Lila found herself lost in thought. The pieces were coming together, forming a picture more vast and terrifying than she had imagined. The flood, she mused aloud, it wasn't just about punishing humanity or preserving a chosen few. It was a harvest. Sophia and Emre looked at her quizzically. Think about it, Lila continued. The Demiurge doesn't just want to control humanity. He needs us. Our divine sparks our potential, it's fuel for his false reality. Emre's eyes widened with understanding. The Ark wasn't just a prison ship. It was a battery. Exactly, Lila nodded. And every cycle of reincarnation, every soul trapped in the illusion of material existence, feeds his power. As the coast of Italy came into view, Lila felt the weight of their mission pressing down on her. They weren't just uncovering hidden history anymore. They were in a race to liberate the human soul from cosmic-scale exploitation. Rome was a city transformed. The awakening had hit the heart of Catholicism hard, with crowds of the faithful and clergy alike gathered in St. Peter's Square, grappling with visions that challenged millennia of doctrine. Under cover of this chaos, Lila and her companions slipped into the Vatican through ancient catacombs known only to a select few scholars. The archives, usually a bastion of strict security, were left vulnerable as even the Swiss guards struggled with newfound memories of past lives. In a forgotten corner of the vast repository, they found it, a sealed clay cylinder bearing the mark of Shem, son of Noah. With trembling hands, Lila broke the seal and unrolled the ancient parchment within. The text was in an archaic form of Hebrew, but Emre's expertise allowed him to decipher its contents. To those who remember, the Ark is not wood and nail, but flesh and spirit. The key lies not in sacred relics, but in the very frequency of creation. To break the chains of the demiurge, one must sing the song that shaped the stars. As Emre read these words aloud, a low hum began to fill the archive. The frequency of 528 hertz, amplified by the awakened souls around them, resonated with something deep within the Vatican itself. Suddenly, the floor beneath them began to shift. Hidden mechanisms, older than the church itself, whirred to life. A section of the archive's stone floor slid away, revealing a spiraling staircase descending into darkness. Lila exchanged glances with her companions. They had come too far to turn back now. As they descended the ancient steps, the humming grew louder. The air grew thick with an energy that made their skin tingle, and their minds reel with half-remembered truths. They emerged into a vast, circular chamber. At its center stood an object that defied comprehension. A swirling vortex of light and shadow, somehow both liquid and solid, contained within a framework of impossible geometry. The Ark, Sophia gasped. The real Arkansas. Lila approached the swirling construct, feeling the pull of countless souls trapped within its cosmic machinery. This was the true heart of the Demiurge's grand deception, a perpetual motion machine powered by the divine spark of humanity itself. But before they could act, a voice rang out from behind them. "Step away from the Ark, Dr. Marlowe." They turned to find Alexander Roth, chief of security for Lux Veritas, flanked by a team of armed men. His eyes blazed with a fervor that went beyond mere human determination. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Roth said, his voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "The Demiurge's order is all that stands between humanity and cosmic chaos." As Roth's men raised their weapons, Lila realized they stood at the precipice of a choice that would reshape reality itself. The flood had never truly ended. But now, with the truth of the Ark laid bare before them, humanity faced a new deluge, one of awakening, of remembering, of reclaiming their stolen divinity. The waters of illusion were about to break, and the world would never be the same. The chamber pulsed with energy, the swirling vortex of the true Ark casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across the ancient walls. Lila stood frozen, her heart pounding as Alexander Roth and his armed men advanced. The hum of the Ark grew louder, resonating with a frequency that seemed to vibrate in her very bones. "You don't understand," Roth said again, his voice sharp but tinged with desperation. "If you disrupt the Ark, you won't just free humanity, you'll destroy everything. The balance between order and chaos will collapse." Lila took a step forward, her eyes locked on Roth. "The balance you're talking about isn't real. It's a prison. Humanity isn't meant to be trapped in this endless cycle of reincarnation, feeding the Demiurge's false reality." Roth's jaw tightened. "And what happens when you break the cycle? Do you think humanity is ready for the truth? For the responsibility of their own divinity? Chaos will consume them." Sophia stepped beside Lila, her voice calm but firm. "Chaos isn't the enemy. It's part of creation. True freedom means embracing both order and chaos, spirit and matter." Roth raised a hand, signaling his men to hold their positions. For a moment, he seemed to waver, his gaze flickering toward the swirling Ark at the center of the chamber. "You felt it too, haven't you?" Lila said softly. "The memories, the visions. You know this isn't just about control, it's about liberation. For all of us." For a brief moment, Roth's stern mask cracked, revealing something raw and conflicted beneath. But then his resolve hardened again. "I can't let you do this," he said, his voice low. Before anyone could react, one of Roth's men fired a warning shot into the air. The sound echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap, shaking loose dust from the ancient ceiling. And then the Ark responded. The swirling vortex flared with blinding light, its hum rising to an almost deafening pitch. Everyone in the room staggered as waves of energy rippled outward, filling their minds with visions. Visions from beyond. Lila saw herself standing on a mountaintop, surrounded by countless others, each one glowing with an inner light that connected them like threads in a vast cosmic web. She saw Noah weeping as he sealed the first Ark, his hands trembling as he realized what he had done. She saw Shem standing before a council of luminous beings, the Watchers, pleading for a way to undo his father's mistake. They showed him the blueprint for the second Ark, not a physical vessel, but a frequency embedded in humanity itself, waiting to be awakened. And she saw Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, watching from his throne of shadows as humanity began to stir from its slumber. His face was not angry, but afraid. The vision ended as abruptly as it began. Lila gasped for breath, her knees buckling under the weight of what she had seen. "It's true," Emre whispered beside her, his voice shaking. "The Ark isn't just a machine, it's alive. It's connected to all of us." Sophia reached out to steady Lila, her eyes wide with understanding. "This is it," she said. "This is why Noah built it, to give us a way back to ourselves." Roth staggered back, clutching his head, as if trying to block out what he'd seen. No, this can't happen. Humanity isn't ready." Lila straightened, her resolve hardening like steel. "Humanity has been ready for millennia. It's time we remembered who we are." She turned toward the Ark and placed her hands on its shimmering surface. The energy coursing through it was almost overwhelming, a torrent of light and sound that seemed to pierce every cell in her body. 528 hertz, Sophia reminded her urgently. "That's the key frequency." Lila closed her eyes and focused on the resonance she'd felt earlier at Göbekli Tepe, the frequency that had awakened something deep within her DNA. Slowly, she began to hum it aloud. The Ark responded instantly. Its swirling light shifted into patterns that mirrored Lila's voice, waves rippling outward like rings in water. Around her, everyone froze as another wave of energy swept through them, but this time it wasn't chaotic or overwhelming. It was warm and steady, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. One by one, Roth's men lowered their weapons, their faces slack with awe as they experienced their own awakenings. Roth himself fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face as he whispered, "I see them, all my lives, all my mistakes." Sophia joined Lila at the Ark's side, adding her voice to the resonance until it became a chorus, a song that transcended language or thought. As the frequency reached its crescendo, the Ark exploded into pure light, not destructive, but transformative. The walls of the chamber dissolved into nothingness as everyone present found themselves standing in an infinite expanse of stars. The Pleroma. They were no longer bound by time or space. Each person stood as both an individual and part of a greater whole, a vast ocean of consciousness where every soul was a spark of divine light. Lila felt herself merging with this collective awareness while still retaining her sense of self. She understood now that humanity's true nature wasn't something external or distant. It had always been within them. "This is what they tried to keep from us," Sophia said beside her, her voice filled with wonder. "This is who we really are." But even in this state of transcendence, Lila could feel something dark lingering at the edges, a shadow trying desperately to hold on. Yaldabaoth appeared before them, not as an omnipotent god, but as a broken figure wrapped in chains of his own making. "You can't do this," he roared, his voice trembling with fear. "Without me, there will be nothing." "No," Lila said firmly, stepping forward to face him. "Without you, there will finally be everything." With those words, Yaldabaoth's form began to unravel, his shadow dissolving into light as he was absorbed back into the Pleroma from which he had come. A new beginning. When Lila opened her eyes again, she was back in Rome, but everything had changed. The world outside was alive with possibility. People moved through the streets not as strangers, but as beings connected by an unshakable bond, a shared understanding that they were all part of something greater than themselves. "The flood is over," Emre said quietly beside her. Lila nodded, feeling tears prick at her eyes, not from sadness, but from hope. For centuries, humanity had been trapped in cycles of forgetting and remembering, but now they had broken free. The second ark had fulfilled its purpose, not by saving bodies, but by awakening souls. As she looked up at the sky, clear and infinite, Lila knew this was only the beginning of humanity's journey toward its true potential. And for the first time in millennia, they were finally awake.